On November 20th, 1947, Princess Elizabeth was getting ready for her wedding. 21 years old, about to marry Philip Mountbatten at Westminster Abbey in front of 2,000 guests and 200 million radio listeners worldwide. And the tiara snapped. The Diamond Fringe Tiara, the one she'd borrowed from her mother for the ceremony, broke as it was being fitted. Right there, morning of the wedding. The court jeweler was rushed to the palace with a police escort to make an emergency repair, and for a few frantic minutes, the most photographed bride of the 20th century didn't know if she'd have a tiara at all. But here's the thing nobody talks about. That tiara wasn't originally a tiara. It was a necklace. 47 graduated diamond bars in the Russian kokoshnik fringe style, created by Collingwood Co, given to Queen Victoria, passed down as a wedding gift in 1893 to a 26-year-old princess named Victoria Mary of Teck. And that princess? Elizabeth's grandmother. The woman Elizabeth would grow up calling Gan-Gan, looked at a necklace and saw a tiara hiding inside it. She had it re-engineered with a frame mechanism so the 47 diamond bars could lay flat around a throat or curve upright on a rigid bandeau insert to stand on a head. One set of components, two completely different modes. A dresser could switch between them without calling a jeweler. Queen Mary made that conversion in the 1890s. Half a century later, her engineering decision shaped the single most iconic image of her granddaughter's life. Every photograph of young Elizabeth on her wedding day, diamond sunburst blazing above that veil. That's Mary's design, Mary's conversion, Mary's mechanical specification, made before Elizabeth was even born. And that tiara was just the beginning, because virtually every major piece of jewelry Queen Elizabeth II wore across her 70-year reign was either created, modified, converted, or built from scratch by one woman, her grandmother, Queen Mary of Teck, born 26th of May, 1867, died 24th of March, 1953. And she didn't collect jewelry, she engineered it. Elizabeth inherited not just a collection of pretty things, she inherited a system, modular, interchangeable, configurable, and she spent her entire reign operating it exactly the way Mary designed it to run. To understand Elizabeth's jewelry is to understand Mary's engineering. They're inseparable, and nobody frames it that way. So let's start with the piece Elizabeth wore more than almost any other. The Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara. Gerard & Company made it, funded by public subscription from young women across Britain and Ireland as a wedding gift for Mary in 1893. Original configuration: a base bandeau of alternating pearls and diamonds, topped by diamond festoons and vertical spike elements. Mary looked at it and decided the bandeau was dead weight, added bulk, didn't improve the visual or structural profile. So she stripped it away entirely, removed the lower section, and kept only the upper diamond framework, like pulling the housing off a mechanism to reduce mass and improve performance. Elizabeth inherited this tiara in its stripped-down form. She wore it so constantly in official photographs, year after year, decade after decade, that it became arguably the most recognizable piece of jewelry in the world. She called it Granny's tiara. Most people who've seen Elizabeth's portrait, on stamps, on currency, in every official photo from the 1950s through the 2020s, have seen this piece. They assume they were looking at the tiara as it was made. They weren't. They were looking at Mary's edit. Mary's decision about which components were necessary and which were excess. Elizabeth wore a piece that her grandmother had redesigned before Elizabeth was born, and she wore it in that redesigned form for 70 years without changing a thing. Because the design was right. Mary got it right the first time. Now, here's where it gets genuinely wild. The Vladimir tiara. Elizabeth wore this one regularly, switching between configurations depending on the diplomatic context, the color of her outfit, sometimes the political sensitivity of the event. Pearls for one state banquet, emeralds for the next, bare diamond circles for a third look. 3 entirely different presentations from a single tiara frame. And the story of how that tiara reached Elizabeth's jewel vault involves the Russian Revolution, a diplomatic bag, a spy who may not technically have been a spy, and her grandmother's refusal to leave anything in a single configuration when it could serve multiple purposes. Around 1874, Grand Duchess Vladimir of Russia, born Marie of Mecklenburg-Schwerin, commissioned the St. Petersburg jeweler Karl Edvard Bolin to create a tiara of 15 interlocking diamond circles, each suspending a pearl drop. It was one of the most recognized pieces in the Romanov collection. Then, 1917 happened. The dynasty collapsed. Grand Duchess Vladimir fled Russia. Her jewels stayed behind in the Vladimir Palace. What happened next reads like a thriller. Albert Stopford, a man who moved between British diplomacy, art dealing, and what looked a lot like informal intelligence work, gained access to the Vladimir Palace during the revolutionary chaos, retrieved the Grand Duchess's jewel cache, and smuggled it out of Russia concealed in a diplomatic bag. Diplomatic immunity. Nobody searched it. The Grand Duchess kept the tiara until her death in 1920. It passed to her daughter, Princess Nicholas of Greece, born Grand Duchess Elena Vladimirovna, and around 1921, Queen Mary bought it. A normal buyer would have had it cleaned and repaired. Mary had it upgraded. She sent it to Gerard's workshops on Albemarle Street and directed them to engineer a hook and socket fitting inside each of the 15 diamond circles. A mount point that could accept either the original Bolin pearl drops or a second set of drops she'd have made from emeralds sourced from a completely different collection. The Cambridge emeralds. These had descended through Mary's maternal family, from her grandmother, Princess Augusta of Hesse-Kassel, Duchess of Cambridge, through her mother, Princess Mary Adelaide, Duchess of Teck, down to Mary herself. Nothing to do with Russia. Different country, different royal line, different century of provenance. Didn't matter. Mary saw compatible components. She had Gerard cut and mount 15 emerald drops to match the 15 pearl drops, each secured by a miniature safety catch. A dresser could swap all 15 in minutes. Pearls for luminosity, Cambridge emeralds for deep green drama, or bare diamond circles, no drops at all, for a third configuration. 3 distinct looks from one frame, using components sourced from a Romanov palace and a British-German royal line, united by a mechanical interface that Mary specified down to the catch mechanism. Elizabeth inherited this tiara and operated it for decades. She understood the system intuitively. Pearl configuration for certain events, emerald for others, bare circles when the occasion called for something cleaner. The swap mechanism Mary commissioned in the early 1920s was still functioning perfectly in the 2020s. Same Gerard-engineered sockets, same safety catches, same procedure that Mary established 100 years earlier. 100 years of continuous operation, from a modular system designed by a woman born in 1867. That's not jewelry. That's engineering. But Elizabeth's inheritance went deeper than tiaras. She also got what she dryly nicknamed Granny's Chips. And the story behind that nickname is maybe the most audacious piece of jewelry engineering ever attempted. 26th of January 1905. Premier mine near Pretoria, South Africa. Superintendent Frederick Wells spots an enormous crystal jutting from the mine wall and pries it out with a pocket knife. Weight: 3,106 carats, about 621 grams, size of a man's fist. the largest gem-quality rough diamond ever discovered. Named the Cullinan after mine chairman Sir Thomas Cullinan, the Transvaal colony government purchases it for £150,000 and presents it to King Edward VII on the 9th of November 1907. Edward sends it to the Asher Diamond Company in Amsterdam. Joseph Asher cleaves it on 10th February 1908 after months of study. 9 major stones and 96 smaller brilliants emerge. Cullinan 1, the Great Star of Africa, 530.2 carats, pear-shaped, goes into the sovereign's scepter. Cullinan 2, 317.4 carats, cushion cut, goes into the imperial state crown. Those are the famous ones. Those are in the Tower of London behind thick glass. Cullinan's 3 through 9 entered the personal royal collection, and Mary decided every single one would be modular. Cullinan 3, pear-shaped, 94.4 carats. Cullinan 4, cushion cut, 63.6 carats. Mary had Gerard mount them as a pendant brooch, 3 hanging beneath 4, using a detachable fitting that allowed the 2 diamonds to be worn separately, combined as a pair, or removed from their mounts entirely for integration into other settings. Cullinan 5, a heart-shaped stone of 18.8 carats, was set in a brooch engineered to double as the centerpiece of a platinum stomacher, detachable mount, migratory between configurations. Cullinan's 7 and 8, marquise cut, 11.5 carats, and oblong brilliant, 6.8 carats, were paired in yet another brooch with removable fittings. Mary even had provisions made for Cullinan's 1 and 2, the one supposedly locked into the scepter and crown, to be extracted and worn as personal jewelry if needed. She told Gerard, "Make every one of the largest cut diamonds in human history removable, reconfigurable, and interchangeable. Build the mounts with threaded screw posts, pin and socket fittings, hook and catch mechanisms in platinum. Make them robust enough to last." They lasted over a century. Elizabeth inherited Granny's chips, Cullinan's 3 and 4 in their paired brooch configuration, and wore them at public engagements throughout her entire reign. That nickname tells you everything. Granny's chips. Elizabeth was being dry, being funny, but she was also, maybe accidentally, capturing Mary's whole philosophy. To Mary, even the largest cut diamonds in human history were chips, components, parts to be socketed in, pulled out, and re-socketed somewhere else as the system demanded. The confidence it took to treat those stones this way is hard to overstate. These aren't craft store crystals. These were the most valuable cut gems on the planet. And Mary's instruction was, make them swappable. Build me an interface. Elizabeth respected that audacity. She operated those mounts exactly as Mary had specified. She never redesigned them, never needed to. Then there's the piece that connects Elizabeth most directly to the public imagination of royal glamour. Even though most people don't realize Elizabeth barely wore it herself. The Cambridge Lover's Knot Tiara. Mary commissioned it from Gerard in 1914, based on an earlier piece from her grandmother, Princess Augusta, but she didn't copy the original. She specified a new design from scratch. 19 diamond arches, each crowned with a lover's knot bow motif in diamonds, each suspending a large Baroque pearl on a detachable drop mount. Hook and socket fittings. 19 removable pearl drops. Tiara with pearls. Soft, traditional. Tiara without pearls. Sleek, geometric. 2 configurations, 1 frame. Elizabeth inherited this piece and lent it extensively. Princess Diana wore it throughout the 1980s and 1990s. Every iconic photograph of Diana at a state dinner in a pearl and diamond tiara. That's Mary's 1914 specification. Catherine, Princess of Wales, began wearing it at state banquets from 2015 onward. Same mechanism, same detachable drops, same sockets Mary specified when the First World War was about to erupt. The tiara reportedly gave Diana headaches because of its weight, which is maybe the one engineering problem Mary didn't solve. The lover's knot hasn't been fundamentally altered since 1914. Over 100 years. 3 different women, Mary, Diana, Catherine. Same piece, same mechanism, same click of Baroque pearl into Gerard-built socket. That's not a family heirloom. That's a platform. Elizabeth understood she'd inherited a platform. She didn't redesign. She didn't strip pieces down and rebuild them the way Mary had. She didn't engineer new interchangeable mechanisms or harvest stones from old settings. And this is where you have to separate the 2 women to understand what each actually contributed. Mary was the architect. Elizabeth was the operator. And that's not an insult. It's the highest compliment you can pay to an architect. Elizabeth ran Mary's system for 70 years, and the system never broke down. She chose the right configuration for the right moment, every time. Pearl drops in the Vladimir for one diplomatic reception, emerald drops for the next. Granny's chips pinned to a coat for a public engagement. The girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, Mary's stripped-down edit, for the official portrait that would appear on stamps seen by billions. December 1911 is a perfect example of how deep Mary's engineering ran. George V and Mary traveled to India for the Delhi Durbar, the vast ceremony where they'd be presented as emperor and empress before tens of thousands. Mary looked at her existing collection and decided nothing was adequate. She didn't buy a new suite. She built one. Working with Gerard, she identified diamonds and emeralds across multiple existing pieces, from the Cambridge family holdings, from the broader royal collection, from items sitting unused, and had the stones extracted and recombined into a complete parure: tiara, necklace, stomacher, earrings. All diamonds and emerald cabochons. The tiara was a towering structure designed to read at maximum impact under the Indian sun. She was running a part spin. A Victorian brooch nobody wore anymore wasn't a brooch. It was a dead circuit board with perfectly good components soldered onto it. Desolder, redeploy. Put them where they'll be seen. Elements of the Durbar parure were later broken up, redistributed across the collection, stones migrating into other settings. Some reached Elizabeth in modified forms. That's not a design flaw. That's a design feature. Mary built it to be disassembled, because she built everything to be disassembled. And this brings us to Mary's reputation, the shadow that hung over all this brilliance. For decades, the standard line on Queen Mary was that she was acquisitive. The stories are famous. Mary visiting someone's home, admiring an object, a vase, a painting, a bit of porcelain, admiring it so pointedly, so relentlessly, that the host felt cornered into offering it as a gift. The Magpie Queen, the royal hoarder. But look at what she did with everything she acquired. She didn't vault it, didn't display it behind glass. She stripped it, redesigned it, harvested its components. Every acquisition fed an ongoing engineering project. She wasn't hoarding. She was sourcing materials. She was a systems designer building a modular collection across 5 decades, and every new input was raw material for the next iteration. The jewelry historian Leslie Field, in her 1987 book The Queen's Jewels, still the most detailed study of the royal collection, documented Mary's involvement at the specification level. Mary visited Gerard's workshops, not the showroom, the workshops, where craftsmen bent platinum and set stones. She communicated requirements in technical detail. She specified mechanisms. She understood structural possibilities and pushed for configurations that maximize the versatility of every component. This wasn't a wealthy woman telling a jeweler to make something nice. This was a systems architect iterating on a platform across half a century. And Elizabeth, perhaps better than anyone, understood what she'd inherited. She maintained it. She deployed it strategically. She kept it running. 70 years of state banquets, diplomatic receptions, coronation ceremonies, royal weddings, Christmas broadcasts. And at nearly every one, Elizabeth was wearing Mary's engineering, operating Mary's system, running Mary's code. Here's what stays with you. Mary died on 24th March 1953. 70-plus years later, dressers were still clicking Cambridge emerald drops into the same hook-and-socket fittings she specified for the Vladimir tiara, still swapping pearl pendants on and off the lover's knot using the mechanism she designed in 1914, still pinning Cullinan III beneath Cullinan IV on the same Gerard screw mount she commissioned after 1908, still converting the diamond fringe from necklace mode to tiara mode using the mechanism she specified in the 1890s. Every time you saw Elizabeth on television, and now every time you see Catherine or Camilla at a state occasion, you were almost certainly looking at Queen Mary's engineering. She didn't just wear the crown jewels, she built the operating system that the entire modern royal collection runs on. An engineer working in diamonds instead of steel. And the system she designed is still live, still modular, still interchangeable, still running exactly the way she specified it. Nobody since has had the nerve, the vision, or the skill to do what she did. They haven't needed to. The system works. Subscribe for more stories like this.